All right. Greetings from the dark continent, Conscious Caracal here. And tonight I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Odin Moja, a computer scientist and someone with a very specific interest in artificial intelligence, but not just an interest, also actually some very knowledgeable on the topic. So welcome to the show. Dumela Lekai Morena.
Reteng Lekai Morena.
Keteng. All right, so just for the people that don't know who you are, just give us a little bit of an elevator pitch on exactly why they should care.
Why they should care? Well, for starters, I run this fun little... sorry, I'm just popping open my whiskey bottle here, the last of my reserves. For starters, I run a fun little, I guess, tech podcast, which discusses a lot of stuff other than tech. But yeah, called the No Script Show. It's always fun. Always fucking, yes, thank you, Ron. It's a full WotanZA knot, looking snazzy. It's a fun tech podcast, memes, tech, society, politics, all sorts of stuff, but we try to give it a tech spin. And as you said, I have a specific focus from a computer science perspective in artificial intelligence. So yeah, and my master's was on the use of automated agents in reducing risk parameters in retirement annuities in the South African market. So I know a bit about finance as well.
Nice, dude. And I see here in the chat we're being informed that Joe Rogan's episode of with Elon Musk is just premiering now, so completely unintentional. I didn't plan this. It's just a little bit of synchronicity there, because I just knew my mate Odin has a bone to pick with Mr. Musk. So that's
once again Musk.
All right. So tonight's topic, as you laid out your expertise, tonight's topic is artificial intelligence. Now, I think any good conversation on this topic should start with the question of what is artificial intelligence. Is this every time that you talk about artificial intelligence, is this like a hell situation or a Terminator, or what is this exactly?
Okay, cool. Great that you asked that. Okay, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant now, because
we've got time.
What is...
We've got time.
Of course, yeah. It's not like we're going out today. What is artificial intelligence? Okay, so in its most basic form, artificial intelligence is the art of making machines behave in situations with challenges in a way that would be considered intelligent behavior by humans or rational beings, and that's the sort of very bland, sanitized sort of explanation. But I prefer actually my mentor when I was doing my master's. She summed it up very, very, very well, in that artificial intelligence is basically if you had a machine and it could sum up the first 30 digits of pi instantaneously, you wouldn't consider that a very smart machine. But if you had somebody who could sum up the first 30 digits of pi, you'd consider them a fucking genius. Now, if you had a person that could look at 5 objects on a desk, identify them, walk on that desk and not fall off the edge, you wouldn't call them a smart person, you'd call them a person. But if you had a robot that could do the same, you'd call it a smart machine. Therefore, the real definition of artificial intelligence is the quest to figure out why the fuck machines are so stupid. And that's the thing. But it's a term that covers a number of things in that it covers basic artificial intelligence and things like deep learning and superior logic. Nice one. Basic artificial intelligence, deep learning, and a number of methods within artificial intelligence.
All right.
Which I can explain actually for you if you want. There's a big difference between artificial intelligence and deep learning.
Yeah, give us a little bit of a rundown there again. Explain it to us like we're 5.
Explain like we're 5. All right, cool. So a lot of people these days have not even luxury cars. Even on your basic cars, you have this whole park assist thing going, right? Whereby it can detect sort of objects in front of you and behind you, and it can sort of help parallel park for you. That, in a broad sort of definition of the word, is a form of artificial intelligence, because the machine is detecting objects or obstacles in front and behind it and figuring out how in a space to maneuver into this position. That's artificial intelligence. But it's not deep learning. Deep learning is when the machine is sort of self-taught. So to illustrate the difference, we've got the example with the car that parks, but your car was taught how to do that. It was programmed into the machine. Deep learning would be something like Google's AI, where it learns from 1 million games how to beat the best StarCraft players in the world. That's deep learning, because we didn't program it to do that. It figured it out through a number of techniques. I think they actually used a neural network. It was a neural network, not a genetic algorithm. I'll get into what those methods are in a second. So deep learning is when it's self-taught and you don't have to sort of figure out the way for the machine.
Okay. And so then basically from what you've been explaining here now, the first thing people think of when they think artificial intelligence is that we're trying to create a man-made brain in a vat, or to create sentience. But from what I understand, that can't be farther from the truth. Am I correct?
Okay, so that sort of man-made brain in a vat sort of artificial intelligence is sort of the holy grail of artificial intelligence, as it were. It's what we refer to as artificial general intelligence, because any artificial intelligence you see these days, by the way, I'm of the opinion, I'm of the group of scientists saying artificial general intelligence is still quite a bit off. So all these machines that you see, oh, it's so smart, it figured out how to beat Garry Kasparov in chess, or oh, it defeated all the best StarCraft players in the world. Who cares? I honestly don't give a shit, because that's very narrow intelligence. It can only do that one thing. When people think of that brain in the vat, when people think of Skynet, what they're thinking of is artificial general intelligence, is what we as people have. IBM Watson, great example, Brian, because there's actually a story about Watson, in that it's had a lot of that's a lot of upfront investment in teaching Watson. Watson doesn't have the amount of deep learning that was required. IBM spent a lot of money on pumping that thing full of information.
Maybe just tell us, what is IBM Watson?
It's this machine that absolutely blows humans out of the water when it comes to Jeopardy, because of all the information they put into it. It's sort of like Deep Blue, where Deep Blue was given all this information on chess, and it beat Garry Kasparov. But again, it was programmed into Deep Blue. That's a stark difference from this one machine you probably haven't heard of called Blondie 123, which was basically an actual deep learning machine, whereby they just let this thing, and I think it was an actual genetic algorithm, play against people, online checkers, over time. And eventually it started beating people because it was learning from each situation. And obviously the reason you want to go for, well, as dangerous as it is, deep learning, is because we don't always have the resources to pump all the information into every machine we're trying to teach to do things. But again, I'm digressing from my point. Artificial general intelligence is the one that most people are scared of, Skynet and all that. Watson doesn't understand military tactics. Deep Blue, I guess it's chess, it sort of understands military tactics, but Deep Blue and Watson don't understand object recognition. That's a different type of intelligence that you have to teach people. That's why we say artificial general intelligence is miles away, because we as humans have all these intelligences packed into this tiny, mushy little piece of hardware. It's difficult to combine all those intelligences together, object recognition, speech recognition, all sorts of things. To combine all of that into one, that would be artificial general intelligence. That would be HAL. That would be Skynet. And that we're very far from. Now, does that mean no artificial intelligence right now is dangerous? No, it just means that true human-esque artificial general intelligence is still a while off.
Mm. And yeah, so basically how I understand it is that this artificial general intelligence that you're talking about is not a artificial intelligence that is just focusing on one thing, like being very good at chess or being very good at checkers or StarCraft or whatever. It is intelligence that has been created that can pretty much be a jack of all trades. It can learn to be good at chess. It can be good at painting. It can be good at writing stories, writing music, writing philosophy even. It's basically a human brain. But that's the thing that people usually think about when they think about artificial intelligence, is that we're just trying to create a mechanical brain with a soul. The question of, do androids dream of electric sheep comes to mind.
By the way, shout out to Macallan, the last of my good whiskey. Yeah.
Well done. I see Quentin has a comment for you. In the context of neural networking and deep learning, what are the risks of defining vague reward contingencies? I'm thinking Bostrom, RE, an AI that is programmed to learn to make humans happy.
Okay, cool. Do I believe I see sideliner Quentin and Ron. I'm gonna answer Quentin's first.
We'll get to every one of them.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Nick Bostrom. I actually quoted him pretty extensively in my master's thesis, and he although I have my foibles with him, he does have moments where he's absolutely brilliant in terms of AI ethics and things like a machine programmed to make people happy. Because what Quentin's sort of alluding to here is unintended consequence. One of my favorite scientists, by the way, a guy by the name of Isaac Arthur. By the way, shout out to him. He got married this week or the week before. Yeah, he did a whole episode on this called the paperclip maximizer. So yeah, there are some risks in that we do not see the unintended consequences. Okay, a great example would be like make people happy. Okay, well, its definition of us being happy could be, that's where you run into
machine.
Yeah, just hook us up to a dopamine machine. But also unintentionally, let's say you have a robot that's minding the business of a child, a nanny bot, for example. It could be programmed to protect the child. Now, let's say the child sees a buck outside the window, and the child says, "I really want that buck." Okay, and the robot says, "Well, it's too dangerous for you to go outside, but I got to keep you happy." So what it could end up doing is walking outside, keeping the child locked in, breaking the buck's neck, dragging the corpse in, and handing it to the child. Pretty fucking traumatic. Yeah, but technically it's done what it's supposed to. So yes, there's a lot of danger in terms of unintended consequences.
Or the robot asks Greta Thunberg what would make her happy, and she says Earth without global warming or without pollution, and then he just wipes out humanity to clean it up.
Yeah, pretty much. That's possible.
And before we can move on to the other questions, I think I just want to get to the meat of this conversation first, because seeing as it is in the title and he is currently premiering on Joe Rogan's channel, and that is Mr. Musk. In terms of he and you've mentioned some dangers now of AI and some of the risks, but he seems very adamant in terms of this is not something to pursue. This is not something that humanity needs or something that humanity should in any way perfect or develop. And he's been very vocal about this. I think he's very famous for the fact that he's vocal on it, even though he's not a computer scientist, he's a physicist. So what are your thoughts on exactly Mr. Musk's sentiments when it comes to artificial intelligence? Do you think he makes some good points? And what other aspects of his takes on the matter do you think are just completely out of line? You don't think really hold a lot of water? Do constrain yourself in your answer, because I know you feel strongly about it.
Just give me a second before I comment on this.
While Odin takes his drink, everyone in the chat, cheers. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Okay, Elon Musk. Elon Musk is both right and wrong about AI. First of all, thank you for pointing out that he is a fucking physicist, not a computer scientist. There is a reason I do not comment on the dangers and opportunities of a technology like CRISPR, which is a biotech, because I'm not a bioscientist. I'm a computer scientist. So fuck you very much, Elon. I know that you are trying to do well, but you can't be ignorant to the point that you don't realize the halo effect around you as a celebrity when you go off about how dangerous AI is. Yes, there is something we should be cautious about it, but there's also a great amount of halo effect, and people will lose their minds if you say that it's dangerous. Now, let's get to him going on and off about AI. You may or may not know that Elon Musk recently started this open AI initiative. And no, it's not going to be 30 minutes. I'm going to get to the WotanZA in about 15 seconds. You know that he started this open AI initiative, okay? And he also started this Neuralink initiative. So he's sitting bitching endlessly about AI and OPSEC. By the way, he tweeted a picture of his kid's fucking face. Very OPSEC, Elon. He started this this open AI initiative where it's like, oh, this is how we'll do AI sort of safely. So for him finally coming around and saying, yes, it's dangerous, but we can do it, I say bravo. But for him daring to fucking endlessly shit on my profession, I kind of take personally. Him going on and on about AI being dangerous and now starting open AI and Neuralink is tantamount to the fucking head girl of the school going on for 30 minutes to the rest of the assembly about skirt length and being modest, and then that Friday night proceeding to blow the entire fucking rugby team at a house party. Real cheek on your part, Elon, but thank you for coming around finally.
Yeah, man. It's so for those who don't know, Odin is the father of the WotanZA, where you obliterate your opponent with as little effort as possible in as succinct a manner as possible, but employing a scorched earth tactic within a very concentrated area. So pretty much what we saw there. Yes, dude, you had a brilliant one for Cyril Ramaphosa also this week. What was it? Shit, I'm gonna have to go check it out.
Yeah, he's that dude that promises you the wildest night out ever, and he's like 12 shots, but 12 shots when we get to the bar. Then his girlfriend calls like halfway to the damn bar. He's like, yes, honey, and then he's like has one beer and it's like, go guys, I gotta go home. That's Cyril. But yes, to Elon, yes, he is right. There is a lot of danger. Do you know who else thought there was a lot of danger? Us, the people involved in AI, literally all of us. My issue with Elon, again, just to be clear, is that he's not careful enough in how he calls attention to the danger of AI. He's too sort of dramatic about it, and people take him too seriously because he's a celebrity. Never mind that he's not actually a computer scientist. So yes, there's an immense amount of danger, and it's something I had literally an entire third of my thesis pointing out all the dangers and what we should do. So yes, there's a lot of danger, but it's also incredibly necessary in many ways. For example, I'll give you an example of why AI might be necessary for us to proceed. In terms of space exploration, you've heard of micrometeors, right? They're like
space exploration is also something Elon holds close to his heart.
Yeah, that I actually agree with him on 100%. Like, we need to get off just this planet. But we've heard of, it's one gamma ray burst would wipe us out instantaneously. If you don't know what a gamma ray burst is basically when a star goes supernova and it explodes so much gamma ray energy that it would fry planet Earth almost instantaneously.
So this is not only if this happens to our star. Could be any star within our
star in the Milky Way, any star relatively close to us. It would fry planet Earth. It would turn the world into an ocean of fire. Shout out to the Book of Revelation. So yeah, very much like in the Book of Revelation. So micrometeors or micro objects are sort of coming in at any point when you're flying through space. And one reason why you would need AI is for something called point defense systems. So let's assume we don't develop the technology to have energy shields like they see in the future. Our next option would be to develop point defense systems so that the AI can see an incoming object coming so quickly, an incoming object that's small enough to puncture the hull, but not big enough for us to see or react in time. That would be difficult for humans to take out. We would need an AI on our ship, for example, to detect these micrometeors, and you'd have multiple sort of laser turrets all over the ship, and these would be controlled by an AI, and they could detect incoming objects and fry them almost instantaneously to the point where it doesn't hurt the hull or the hull can take the impact so that we can keep traveling through space. That's just one example of why we would need AI to sort of proceed in life.
So yeah, here's one of the questions that we can address. Sideline Opinions asks, it's this one actually. Is Africa ready for the fourth industrial revolution with all its AI? And I think
not a chance.
Before you already answered. But I think the ANC only talks about the fourth industrial revolution so often because it has the word revolution in it.
Yeah.
All right, and then the other question, actually a very one we can dedicate the entire episode to if we're not careful, is Ruan Goosen asked, do you believe in the singularity? So firstly, maybe explain what you mean by the singularity before you answer.
I almost swallowed my cigar there. The singularity is basically a situation. If I understand what he's referring to, it's a situation whereby so you make a machine, we make a machine, okay, and let's say said machine is pretty good at and we're actually already doing this to a certain extent. This machine is pretty well programmed by us, but we need a bigger, better machine. So this machine then programs the next machine, and let's say it takes a year for the first machine to create the next machine. Then the next machine programs the next machine in 6 months. Then it programs its successor in 3 months, 1 month, a week. And so the singularity is a reference to a situation whereby you would have machines continually programming each other better and better and better and better and better, to a point where it's like infinite intelligence, we don't need you type thing. And it's like there's no point in us even existing. And that is one of the biggest gods that we need to be aware of. Do I believe in it? I think it's possible. I don't know if it's absolutely going to happen, but I think it's possible. I did a whole third of my thesis on safeguards, shout out to Nick Bostrom, that we can do against this sort of thing. And also, by the way, just, it's, to be honest, and I know that there are still some people that are sort of iffy about AI, but unfortunately, the people that are totally against AI, I've got some bad news for you. It's a little bit too late to pull out after you've blown your fucking load. The cat is out of the basket. Fucking somebody, even if all the government stopped now, somebody is still going to be programming AIs right now in their backyard. So we need to proceed, but proceed with caution.
Breaking news: Bellwell Pete says he's figured out that Wotan is the singularity. And you're getting a lot of love in the chat tonight, Odin. Cosmic Surfer says, Wotan, you special, bro.
Appreciate it, Cosmic.
All right. So here's actually another question that was farther up in the chat. Dagbreker asks, what are the possibilities when it comes to programming artificial intelligence that it is basically an inadvertent extension of the programmer's underlying ideology? AI is technically never neutral.
Okay, great. Again, this was actually in the ethics third of my dissertation. Okay, I'm just going to start this off. Just by the way, I guess from this point on, we're only talking about artificial general intelligence. But I would be remiss if I didn't highlight two of the major sort of methods in which we program AI, and one is called neural networks, and the other is called genetic algorithms. So neural networks are sort of the one where you're trying to be analogous to a human brain, where it's sort of like you ask it a question, and based on these amounts of information, it comes to a decision. They're sort of better than decision trees, but it's a type of programming AI where it's like you're meant to answer this sort of generalized question. Whereas the really sort of scary AI where it gets better and better all the time at something would be a genetic algorithm, which is built to sort of mimic natural selection, hence the name genetic algorithm. So if you wanted to find the best route through a town, you would build not really a neural network, but a genetic algorithm. And the genetic algorithm works by creating 6 sort of algorithms within the genetic algorithm program, or however many algorithms. And the top, let's say 80% of those algorithms that work, that's to say you have a fitness function which determines which algorithms get to stay. So you say, okay, these 4 algorithms produced a path through the town that took 15 minutes to walk, and these last 2 produced a path through the town that took 20 minutes to walk. So these last 2 die. So you delete them, and then you do a method called cross pollination through the different algorithms to cross pieces of code. Again, sort of mimicking reproduction, and then they produce a new bunch of algorithms, and you run those, and you run that over and over and over again until you get a really sort of efficient path through the town. And that's the point of genetic algorithm. It's optimization. NASA used it actually to build a really good antenna for their spacecraft, which looks nothing like the type of antenna that you would ever expect any human to build. Now, for the programming when it comes to AI, okay, so in an inadvertent extension of the person's ideology, that's a great question. Again, it was part of my thesis. What you want to do, for example, is obviously, you don't want certain people's ideologies extended into AIs because it would be fucking horrific.
You don't want
for example, yeah, cyber hippies, cyber hippie AIs. So one of my arguments was, if Archimedes, for example, succeeded in making an AI, it might actually not be as great as you think it is, because, hey, man, shout out to the Greeks. Shout out to Diogenes, Chad Diogenes.
That's become an inside joke on this channel, man.
Yeah, shout out to the boy Ruan. One of the issues with having the ancient Greeks create something, if it extended their ideology, would be if one of them decided to make an AI and they extended their morality to their AI. And you'd think that'd be great, but you never seem to remember that back in their day, slavery and man-boy love were cool. So you may not want an AI with the thought that man-boy love is cool. So how do you circumvent this, is what I think Clarke is trying to get to, and there's a whole field in this called machine ethics. And how do you, and we're trying to figure out, how do we not pass on our ethics because it might change in time. And one of the things is
outdated in 50 years.
Exactly. One of the things we're trying to teach it is that not so much to copy what we would say, but to teach the machine to recognize the problem pieces of a situation. So, for example, if you wanted to teach it that murder is wrong, you don't just say murder is wrong, never engage in murder. You would say, you would teach it that violating, or say from a libertarian perspective, initiating violence without violence initiating on you is wrong. And then from there, it could infer on its own that murder is wrong. It's not a perfect solution, but it's somewhere. We're getting somewhere, at least.
All right, we've reached the halfway point. Thank you, everyone that is taking part in the chat. Really enjoying it. Top quality banter I'm seeing all around. And thanks to everyone that's left a like. It really helps the show, gets this out there, and gets us a bit more exposure. So moving on to actually some of my own personal questions that I had. So we're living under a pandemic now. There's a lot of talk about wearing masks. But an unintended consequence of all this mask wearing is that a lot of people have suggested that this can actually help foil facial recognition artificial intelligence that we've seen rolled out over the years. Is that in any way grounded in reality or logic, or is that a misconception?
Yes, it is. I mean, it depends on the algorithm used for the facial recognition. But again, I actually had a chat with Mr. McAfee about this. Most of the time, what you want to do is break up the general shape of your face. So if you have like a straw hat covering most of your face, that'll throw facial recognition. As for masks, I don't know what algorithm the machine looking at you is using. So if it uses, again, it depends on the algorithm that was used for that facial recognition machine. Depending on that, yes, just covering half your face could throw it off, or it couldn't throw it off, and it could infer the other half of your face. It just depends on the algorithm used for that machine. It's like, you know, some dudes can seduce a girl from a mile away, and some dudes are fucking Nick Bauer. Like, come on, you know.
By the way, Dagbreker said your answer to the previous to his question was very good.
Appreciate it, bro.
All right. I don't know what Quentin is talking about here. Maybe you can enlighten me. He says, please explain Bayesian networks. And in your opinion, is this preferable to a top-down approach to AI? Does this ring a bell? I'm completely a layman on this in this regard.
Bayesian networks are I guess they're basically related to decision trees and decision forests, whereby it's sort of...
Yeah, so here's a definition. Bayesian networks are a type of probabilistic graphical model that uses Bayesian inference for probability computations. Bayesian networks aim to model conditional dependence and therefore causation by representing conditional dependence by edges in a direct graph. Now that's all Greek to me. No offense to the
Okay,
Greeks.
so let me break that down. Basically, Bayesian networks are decision trees on steroids or decision forests on steroids. My issue with them, and I'll admit my bias, is that it's mathematicians trying to be programmers. And so it's like you'd have like these two nodes. Let's say you want to figure out what you're gonna, and again, I'm making a lot of generalizations here, guys. You want to figure out, there we go. That's the image I wanted, where it's those little nodes. So if you want to figure out what should we do this weekend for entertainment, you'd have like nodes, and it'd be like, is it raining? Yes, no, maybe. And then it would go to one of those three nodes. And each of those nodes become a sort of interconnected sort of web down tree type thing that ultimately gets to, like you said, an answer based on probability. My issue with them is, again, it's mathematicians trying to be computer scientists. And again, I'm being biased. Top-down approach. It's very dependent on what you're building the AI for. Again, it's really, they can be good. It's really dependent on what you want this AI to do.
All right. Then something else that I wanted to know is, and let's get the virus topics out of the way. Can you use, or can the field of artificial intelligence be used in any way to help fight COVID-19? And can it? Why isn't it used as much if there is a big bonus or benefit to us actually utilizing AI to fight the virus?
I think that it can be, and I don't know why it's okay. I don't know what the guys who are working on this are doing, but I definitely think that it can be, because it doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't need to, take breaks. It doesn't get tired or pissed off at its wife or husband or whatever. It keeps going. So yes, it could. And I'll give you an example of how it could be used to fight the virus. And I'll give you an example of how I absolutely do not want it to be used to fight the virus. Now, there are some people in my field who believe that prevention is better than cure, as they used to say for our HIV campaign. And there are some computer scientists who are of the opinion that the best way to use AI is to be invasive and track people and be like, they're going to move this way or that way. I think that's trash. I think that's stupid. I think it's dystopian, and fuck whoever wants to go down that route. Now, for how it could help people, I think that one of the best ways to figure out this is in terms of image. Okay, for example, is in terms of imaging the virus, processing results quicker, and suggesting new, like if you have like a culture sample and you're trying to sequence certain parts of the DNA, the AI could run through that a lot quicker than a person could. It's going to kind of have to look at this, run the sequencer, and be like, oh, okay, let me try this. Whereas an AI could be like, cool, sequence, run this, do that. Cool, sequence, run this, do that. So I think that it could be used, and I don't know if it is being used, but it could be used to fight the virus in that way. Yeah.
And then also on the topic of when I was talking about facial recognition, don't you think that AI is actually being abused on social media networks to fight hate or to fight wrongthink? But in the end, it's just completely restricting conversations and turning social media networks from places where people used to have free conversations and really could be able to have some genuine, detailed conversations and sharing of ideas, to a point where everything is hopelessly sanitized, not even by a human, but by artificial intelligence systems that have not even been perfected yet.
Yeah, I think that it's. I wouldn't use AI to fight hate speech, honestly, but that's because I'm a bit of a first. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I am of the opinion that you can say whatever the fuck you want. In fact, I've said a lot of terrible things to a lot of people. I've never asked for anyone to be killed, though. That's where I draw the line, where like, please go kill this person, or please go fuck this person up. No, but anything short of that, sure, go ahead and say it. So I don't think, and I think that AI shouldn't be used for speech limiting in any way or form. I think you need to harden the fuck up and grow a sack and just fucking deal with it. It's the internet,
It's a bit of a dystopian idea there. I think it was Razor Fist that said, now you're talking about violent threats on the internet. One thing that is in abundance but doesn't really amount to anything is death threats, where he said if death threats on the internet were real, the internet would almost be as murderous and as dangerous to human life as a communist regime.
Exactly.
But yeah, I do agree that the Wild West of the internet is the perfect environment for ideas to be shared, and then introducing an AI, not even an AI that's been well designed, one that's just coming in with like a broad approach, or like an iron fist approach, is just destroying a lot of free conversation that was going on.
Exactly.
And one person says the YouTube algorithm's name is Karen. So you could perfect that joke, Ruan. You just have to like say what all the letters stand for.
Shout out to Ruan. Shout out to the Fiklir. Where's your 4-color flag, by the way?
The 4-color flag is over there to the left of me.
By the way, I
get into the image.
I know that this is not the topic, but shout out to bots for ending the lockdown or beginning to end the lockdown.
Yeah, man. I saw that. I think you tweeted it out. Let me just check here if I can find the story. Here we go. We can quickly talk about it because I think this, it fits your character so well, because this is something that's very close to your heart. If the site will just load.
Well, I don't think they were going to. Like, if President Masisi, and he's a cool guy, if President Masisi still had Botswana in lockdown by the time Seretse Khamade rolled around, he would have been like pulled out of he would have been pulled out of his office and shot by the military, because nobody was going to sort of. I think they had like 28 cases or something like that. So he would.
You're not going to kill the economy over 30 or 28 cases.
No, they're like, screw it, we out.
We'll take our chances with the virus.
Yeah.
And then also a little bit of a divergence from artificial intelligence, but it does tie back into it. Something that you've talked a lot about on the No Script show, on the tech pod, South Africa's #1 tech podcast, is Clarke Tech, and you mentioned the author of that earlier.
Yeah, I am. By the way, Quentin and Dagbreker Ex Machina, great movie about AI, but it's an even bigger movie about what happens when you're a fucking simp, because that ending would not have happened if the main character wasn't such a fucking simp. Okay, I'm hard on simps. I have no tolerance for simps. Okay. Okay, cool. So anyway, back to the topic.
So the topic is Clarke Tech, something that you've talked about a lot and seem to be very passionate about. What is it?
Okay, Clarke Tech, and again, shout out to, because the guy that coined it, one of my idols, Mr. Isaac Arthur, is coined from the term by Sir Arthur C. Clarke that says any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So it's types of technologies that we are looking at that just for fun, that we like, okay, if we could, what could happen? So one of my favorite examples that he came up with for Clarke Tech is super advanced technology would be time travel, which again, I'm not a physicist or a mathematician. I'm a computer scientist. I'm still in the camp that says it's probably not possible just because it breaks causality. But let's say time travel is possible. Clarke Tech would be a machine where instead of going back in time, you simply press a button and that event never occurred. Like, it's just deleted from continuity and reality. That's the level of technology we're talking about. Clarke Tech would be like, we can break. Better example, Clarke Tech would be machines where we can break the ironclad laws of thermodynamics. So for those of you who don't know the laws of thermodynamics, they're called the ironclad laws because they're the 3 hardest laws in physics to break. Nobody's figured out a way, and from everything we know for the last hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, they're iron tight. They're like God's 3 absolute commandments. Like God's like, I'm going to put this timer on your universe from now until this time. And it basically, the basic premise of thermodynamics is that entropy increases in a system. You have all these little issues about how things happen. So basically, an example of Clarke Tech would be a machine that lets you break thermodynamics in such a way that you could have a perpetual motion machine, because you eliminate all friction and all heat exchanges are perfectly equal. And so now you've got a perpetual motion machine. And if you've got a perpetual motion machine, you could plug that perpetual motion machine up to a dynamo. And if you've got a perpetual motion machine plugged to a dynamo, then you've got infinite electricity for free energy. It's basically a free lunch.
I just saw this comment in the chat. Julius will break any. Well played, sir. Definitely the comment of the night. The rest of the chat, you guys got to up your game. All right. So, yeah, and we've talked about this in person, where back in the day, if you would show, like, for example, if aliens were or advanced alien race were to land on planet Earth in the Middle Ages, people would just think they're magic. They wouldn't think that they're technologically advanced. Today, if that same alien race were to land on planet Earth, we wouldn't think they're magic. We would think they are technologically advanced, even though what they achieve could be pretty much indistinguishable from what we would think is magic.
Yeah, I think we've reached a sort of we've crossed a certain Rubicon whereby I don't think anyone believes this is magic. You know what? Okay, fine. If what appears to be an angel were to come down and do something that breaks the laws of thermodynamics, I'd be like, that's supernatural. That's my definition of supernatural. But anything else, I'm like, no, that's just technology. Like, that's super advanced technology, you know?
No, exactly, man. And I wonder where this transition happened, because there must have been some point where we switched over from explaining something we can't explain as magic, for example, some type of new technology or some type of phenomenon, to a point where if we were to encounter a new technology, we would understand it as advanced technology. And then kind of the whole definition of magic goes out the window, because magic, by definition, is achieving things that should not be possible. But technology, with every passing decade, seems to be achieving things that should not actually be possible.
I think we passed that point at the start of the 20th century. You know, like with the advent of the First World War, we kind of reached a point where we're like, okay, there's no such thing as magic anymore, because we had mechanized warfare. We had a handful of men, you know, who could wipe out an entire battalion of people with a machine gun or whatever. Well, not a whole battalion, but a large squad of men, just mow them down. Gas, chemical warfare. By the way, shout out to the SANDF veterans of the Battle of Delville Wood. We still never got the credit we deserved at that battle in World War I, but that's because we were fighting for the British and they never give us our credit. So there's that. Yeah.
You're winning a lot of favors with my audience, Odin. Yeah, man. That's the other thing. Odin is very passionate about his culture and about artificial intelligence and tech, but he's also very passionate about World War I and World War II history. That's actually something we can talk about on another episode, but we can go into it a little bit. And that was something we've actually talked about on previous episodes of your show, of the No Script Show, where I'm like a permanent guest, it seems.
Yeah.
So something that I wanted to ask you, actually, or something I wanted to talk to you about on your show, but you might as well do it here, is what was the big difference between the First World War and the Second World War? What was the big, in terms of tech, military tech, what was the like real groundbreaking thing that you wouldn't maybe not even have been able to predict in the First World War would be a thing so quickly?
From a strategic or tactical standpoint?
From a ability standpoint, like the easy example would be the atomic bomb. I mean, that would be something that people in the First World War would not be able to imagine. But that came in by the way, Elon keeps saying that AI is this huge existential risk. Well, atomic weapons technically right now are a huge existential risk, because we only have one planet and it only takes a handful of bombs to wipe us out. So technically, atomic weapons are still an existential risk. The big changer, the game changer, I would say, would be mobility.
And the Germans pioneered this with their blitzkrieg and like the ability, because before in the First World War, you'd have machine guns. So the favor was very much on the defending side's balance, because you can set up machine guns. So if you're losing and your position is overrun, you start running. And back then, the prevailing military wisdom, as it were, was still, okay, cool. These guys are running, call in the cavalry, we're going to start mowing them down. Because many people forget, up until the First World War, in warfare, the biggest casualties you took a lot of the time were when you were running, and cavalry just ran roughshod over you, speared you, chopped you up, whatever. So cavalry could no longer do that because of trenches and machine guns. So even if you were winning and you caused them to run, they would only run a couple of yards back to the next trench, and that would cost you a lot of men. In the Second World War, if they started running, you could pursue them because you have vehicles, rough terrain vehicles, things mounted on machine guns, and you can keep pressing. You know, tank warfare, blitzkrieg, better aircraft. You could keep pressing. That's the biggest sort of. That's the big. Oh, and infantry, and the small, and the minimization of rapid fire weapons for infantry. You know, the Tommy gun and the MP4, Sturmgewehr, all that stuff. That's the biggest. That's the biggest innovation, I would say.
Right. No, I definitely agree with you. But also, I think, and this relates, I think this falls under the umbrella of mobility, is definitely the air warfare aspect. That was really in its infancy during the First World War, but the Second World War, air bombardment and dogfights pretty much became a very large facet of turning the tide. And I see, Mark, it seems like you've joined us late, because it seems like you are under the impression that my guest is a big fanboy of Mr. Musk. He seems to be very far from it. So you can check out maybe later the part where Mr. Moja sums up his thoughts on Mr. Musk. I think you'll find it very entertaining. Here's actually
sideline opinions. The Boers invented trench warfare, and the British invented concentration camps, and nobody's ever persecuted them for that. So fuck them, not the Boers. Fuck the British and their concentration camp. That is the ultimate bitch nigger move right there. We can't beat them in the field, so we're going to burn their farms and torture their women and children. Really? That's a bitch move.
It's a simp move. But yeah, man, the other thing that I think is, how this actually all ties together is that slow march of technology. I mean, look at how far we came. We talked about this on your show. I don't know which episode. I was on the No Script show. We talked about.
It's our show now, fam.
I talked about I watched the film 1917. And it's a film set in the First World War. And one of the things that just hit me during that film was how shitty the tech was, the weapon and the guns. It really struck me how primitive we actually were at that stage. And that's why I asked the question about the advancement towards World War II, where World War II is a completely different game.
Yeah. I mean, the Germans actually came closer to winning the First World War than they came to winning the Second World War. Everyone there says based. I think that was about the concentration camp thing. That was a bitch move. Like, let's be honest, though, because that's such a bitch move.
Question asks, Odin. Oh, he says, Odin, can you please create an AI that will own the libs once and for all?
I'll do that. That'll be like my last dying act. By the way, Macallan Fall, fantastic whiskey. Fantastic whiskey.
Yo, man, I'm a bit jealous of you, man. I don't have any fortifications left for my water, but maybe soon we might be able
Elon is awesome. Well, look, I'll be fair to Elon. He's a good physicist, and I give him props for what he built with Tesla and that. I will say also, to be fair, that I think there's a lot of talented engineers out. Well, not a lot. There's a few talented engineers out there who could have built something analogous to Tesla if they had received the government subsidies and favors that he did. But not taking that away from him, yes, he's a good physicist and he's good with SpaceX. I will give him that.
People seem to be very interested in whether you can design an AI. Odin, Skulk asks, Odin, can you create an AI to run the country better than the ANC?
I don't think that would be difficult. I don't think one person should be trusted to be running an AI. I mean, like We didn't have the Tswana people didn't have one great chief. We had three great chiefs, and they really helped us. I don't agree. Germany was going to win the Second World War, but chose to attack Russia. No, what won the Second World War was the entrance of the US and the dumbassery of the Japanese, goading them into entering the like that's what really. Okay, so there's a saying that numbers don't win battles, tactics do, and logistics win wars. And with the entry of the US and that their constant sort of machinery and men supplying, that was the death knell for the Germans. Let me tell you how close the Germans got to winning the First World War. With the spring offensive, they were starting to push so fast and so far, they were outrunning their own supply lines every single day. The German Kaiser declared a day of holiday in Germany, saying that if the Allies want peace, they must come and bend before Germany. The Allied High Command were having a crisis meeting at the peak of the spring offensive, saying, "Fuck, we're about to lose the war. We're about to lose the war." Literally, the only thing that stopped the spring offensive was that they kept running too far ahead of their own supply lines. If it weren't for that, they would have just kept going all the way to Calais and be like, "We're done, boys. This war's over." So no, I don't think that the Germans came closer. In fact, the Germans couldn't have won the Second World War because the British still had the Channel protecting them, and the German offensive with Operation Sea Lion was a fucking disaster.
I think this meme sums it up perfectly.
Stalingrad broke the German crack forces. Okay, yeah, okay. Granted, Germany attacking Russia was a dumb idea, but again, I still think that they were closer because
Napoleon.
They should have learned from Napoleon, because again, at no point did the British weren't like, "Oh, we should really actually consider like suing for peace." Like there were people within the chambers of British High Command that were saying, "We need to sue for peace" during the spring offensive. Like they were starting to run newspaper stories that like, "Fuck, we're gonna lose. Like we need to sue for peace."
That feeling when you're marching through the Russian tundra and the snow starts speaking Russian.
Would we be better off if the Germans won the war? That's an interesting question. I don't know. It's a good question to like. Actually, right. Let's debate this on the Two Tswanas One Afrikaner podcast. We might have been. Who knows? Might not have been. I don't know.
Hindsight is 2020, man. That's why I think, especially with this lockdown, the big mantra after the lockdown is going to be when everything returns to relatively normality. The big mantra is going to be, if only we had followed our plan, things would have been better. Signed, the capitalists, the communists, the left wing, the right wing, the neoliberals, the liberals, the anarchists, the libertarians, everyone who didn't have their perfect plan initiated, they will say, "Well, if you just followed our plan."
Yeah, there's no counterfactual. I think, I don't know. Like, would the world have been better if the Germans won the war? Again, it depends on what you define as better. Like, I don't know. Probably, yeah. Hindsight is 2020.
We would be living in a different world, that's for sure. But then something else. You are very passionate about your tech, your World War I and II history, about artificial intelligence, and about your culture. But then something else you're also very interested in and very passionate about is your whiskey. I don't know, what is your main whiskey of choice?
Fireball, but I don't have any. I don't have any at the moment, so I'm drinking this Macallan 12. It's lovely stuff, but yeah.
Nice. Let's see here. Yeah, this is actually a very good point. More died of hunger than in battle. Yeah, that's what a winter will winter gonna do it to you.
It might have been better if people focus on this. If the Germans, well, I actually don't think the Nazis it would have been better if the Nazis had won. I don't think it would have been better if the Nazis had won the Second World War. I think it would have been better if Imperial Germany won the First World War, maybe, but I I don't think it'd be better if the Nazis won this Civil
Actually,
War because I'm black. Yeah.
interesting question. How many times have the Russians ever been the aggressor and attacked the West? Can you enlighten us on this with your
I don't know
West?
how many times, but I know that the Finnish know how to deal with Russians.
Damn right.
Google Simo Haya, the White Death.
I actually am familiar with it. So yeah, something else that I think to round off this conversation on AI, and actually now a little bit of a conversation on war history as well. We should do a complete separate episode on that. Would be what is the future? What can we expect? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you know better than me, seeing as you are immersed in the industry. What can we expect broadly and roughly to see within the next decade in your field?
In my field, okay. I would say that probably driver's licenses are going to go by the wayside. They're going to push for people to no longer be pilots of vehicles, and I'm not totally on board with that. I am on board with things like helping for medical, inferences, sort of advancements of AI in medical informatics. Let's see what else. I think a lot of the conveniences will be pushed. So things like AI is being used to better predict sort of genetic diseases and things like that. That'll be helpful. Okay, a great example would be I actually was at a NYU conference in New York University. By the way, honestly, one of the most fucking left-wing universities in America. Like, people think California is left. Go to NYU. It's like the most left-wing university in America. Okay, but one really sort of interesting project I saw there was using AI to analyze the results of lung X-rays, because when you do a lung X-ray, like especially for looking for things like lung cancer, he says as he takes a puff of his stogie. When you're looking for things like lung cancer, you're looking for certain variations in coloration, certain shapes, and the social merit system. Yeah, that's also possible and also fucking scary. Roll of 5G, faster fucking internet connections. So back to my lung cancer example. So one of the advancements in terms of medical AI would be when you look at a picture for lung cancer, you're analyzing these differentiations in coloration and slight little shapes. And you as a pulmonary specialist, or you as a radiologist, are looking at these slight sort of variations, and you train your eye to do that, and it's something you're trained to do. But I mean, I saw a example demonstration where they had trained an AI to detect these slight color variations and sort of shape differences very quickly, and they could analyze so many more X-ray results than any doctor or group of doctors could. So that would be one of the massive positive things I see for AI, is the ability to detect sort of early warning signs of cancer even better than any person could hope to do. And that would help, because I'd like grandma to live longer because we detected this sort of thing ages in advance.
But you don't think that we will see artificial sentience, to put it very broadly, in our lifetime, where we have an artificial general intelligence that is indistinguishable from a human?
I think that it's possible. I think it's going to, in our lifetime, maybe, but again, this is my own sort of bias coming in, is even if it is sort of artificial general intelligence that's really advanced, I still wouldn't really consider it a person, because it doesn't have a human soul. And that's what, as people distinguish, it has no soul. It has no God-given soul that distinguishes us from machines. But I think that it's possible in our lifetimes that we'd see the cognizance, the starting of it, that real artificial general intelligence would start emerging.
But now you see, now that we're talking about, I think this could be our last topic of discussion. It would then the question arises: if we were to want to test whether we have achieved that, people talk about the Turing test, and also I think we have much more advanced tests to see if something is sentient or not. But will it even be possible to tell whether we have created an artificial intelligence that just perfectly mimics intelligence or human intelligence, or that we've actually created something sentient? Will that be possible?
Depends on your definition of sentience.
Well, sentience would, for me, be creating something that has a free will of its own, something that almost pretty much has a mechanical soul, if you want to put it that way, or something that has an agency of its own, where it makes its own decisions, it evolves, it thinks for itself, it thinks about itself, it has self-awareness.
Okay, so for me, like I actually discussed this in my thesis. So for me, sentience is a combination of two things. It's sort of sapience, the ability to be self-aware, to know that I am a thing and I'm being used for this purpose. And then there's sort of what you term sort of worldly sort of sapience, where it's I can suffer, I can dream, I can long for this, I can whatever. And for me, that would be the ultimate sort of combination of what actual sentience is. I think a lot of machines will enter sort of sentience in that they're aware of what they're being used for. Is a machine capable of suffering, of dreaming, of longing for something? I could be wrong, but I don't think so. And again, they don't have a human soul, but in terms of it's aware of what it's being used for, then yes, it will achieve sentience. Big data. Big data is just a large, like I said, it's a collection of all the information that enables us to make better decisions. It's not magic.
All right, Mr. Moja, we have reached the end of this episode. I'm definitely going to have you on back. We might have a complete episode. This one was dedicated to artificial intelligence. Let's dedicate the next episode when you're on again to maybe a historical perspective. We can talk about the world wars and what happened in the past. I think that will be an excellent way to continue this conversation in the future. But just before we end, do you have any final thoughts? And then just close it off with where people can find you.
Final thoughts. Don't be fooled by lockdown level 3 if you're in South Africa. Just because you're being allowed to buy stuff and live and buy the things you weren't allowed to have, doesn't mean the government boot isn't on your throat. Yeah, be aware of that. We're not going to get all our freedoms back instantaneously. And also, it's okay to love yourself and your family and your culture without hating everyone else. And also, where you can find us at noscriptshow.com, or at me at WotanZA, WOTANZA. And yeah, that's about it. And yeah, be wary of government moves.
And yeah, I put all the links to Odin's social media in the chat, in the description, so you can go check it out for yourself if you found what he said interesting, and if you want to hear him rant a bit more about Elon Musk, talk about tech, or just go on a very long tangent about the Second or the First World War, go check out the No Script Show, and with a lot of Wotanisms and banter in between. But just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone that tuned in. Firstly, thank you very much for, again, an excellent live chat section. You guys presented some very interesting questions that really gave the conversation a lot of substance. A lot of banter as well. A lot of people definitely try to outdo each other with winning the comment of the night. And then also thank you everyone that liked the video. And if you are new to the channel, click subscribe if you've liked what you've seen here, because I'm going to be interviewing more experts in their fields in the coming weeks. especially now in regards to how their fields of expertise relates to the lockdown or to COVID-19. So yeah, if you haven't yet, leave a like. It helps out the show. And then at the very last, thank you, but certainly not least, thank you very much, Mr. Moja, for joining us and talking about, giving a little bit of insights from your side in regards to artificial intelligence, and making the conversation interesting and peppering it with a lot of banter and whimsical moments.
100%, bro.
All right. And then I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their night. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll check you on the next one. Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
Cheers.